I wanted to welcome y'all to Black Power Week. My name is Dre Dawson. I'm the president of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party. This is my vice president, Hammer Mathis, also a panelist for our education talk today. On Black Power Week, we always try to cover the five aspects of black freedom within that week. Today, we're talking about education. We're going to do that with the education panel with our esteemed guest here, which they will introduce themselves in a second. So thank you for watching. Follow us. If you would like to apply, there's a link below. And peace and love.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyra Thomas Walker. I'm the co-chair of the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And we are here to discuss the bills that are going through our General Assembly. Right now, we are trying to educate, or wanting to, not trying, we are wanting to educate our constituents, the Kentuckians, Jefferson County, about these bills that are going through our General Assembly right now. And we do have other people on the panel, and they will introduce themselves.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Monica Hunter. I'm a local principal. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at www.drmonicahunter.com.
Hello, my name is Ahama Brewster, and I'm the General of the Revolutionary Black Panther Party here in Louisville, Kentucky.
Jason Bailey, and I'm the Executive Director at the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy.
Wayman Eddings. You can reach me at waymaneddings.com. I'm a member of the Advocacy Board at the Human Relations Commission, I'm on the Black Tourism Advisory Council, and I run a charity called Rebellion.
Okay, so we are here to discuss some bills that are really going to impact our education, as well as some of our disenfranchised communities. And starting off with House Bill 5 is one that I'm very familiar with, and you have to read it because it's what they call an omnibus bill, where it's just a lot of little, a lot of laws that they're trying to throw into this one bill, a lot of issues that they're trying to throw into this one bill. The one that is very concerning for me, there's several, excuse me, because I'm still reading the bill. And the reason it's taking me so long is because it's kind of triggering. And so now I have to take a break. So whatever triggers me, my self-care is to take a break. But there are some things that are good in that bill, but there are some that are not. And we're going to be looking again at what's the 3 strikes you're out rule, and then penalizing the homeless for being homeless. And that one is real triggering. That's why I had to stop. Because it took me back to when you know your history, and when the slaves became free, if they didn't have anywhere to live, they were arrested. So that's what it took me back to, and it's like starting all over again, and we're going back hundreds of years, you all, and this has to stop. We have to get to Frankfort. We have to, if you can't get to Frankfort, you can email or write your legislators, your senators, your state reps, your House of Representatives, email them. And I can't remember their website, but we'll get it for you before we get off here. And I do have their phone number where you can call.
We'll put it up.
Okay, remind me. I'm sorry, y'all, because I have to get it when I think of it. But I do have their numbers, and we'll give that to them at the end of this session. But we really need to really look into also the education bill. I'm just introducing them because everyone here is going to speak on these bills. And so we have the House bill, Senate Bill 93. We have a post-secondary bill, which is Senate Bill 6. It's a DEI bill. That's a diversity, equity, and inclusion bill. And that's the bill where the legislators are wanting to eliminate equity in education. They want to take out our history. There's so many other things that they want to remove. I think that's the one where they want to remove the books as well. They're just trying to whitewash the education and the history about what happened to black and brown people during slavery, and I say black people during slavery. But I'm going to let everyone else talk because I can talk about it for a long time. So I'm going to let everyone else talk. So whoever, Dr. Hunter, Dr. Hunter,
So speaking on Senate Bill 93, it's near and dear to my heart because I am the principal of an all-male Afrocentric school here in the city. And the way the bill is written, not only will the programs that we have that funnel resources for our black and brown boys, not only will that be removed, but the future of my school could also be impacted. And so just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to our district attorney for our school district, not the district attorney, but for our school district, who primarily works in Frankfurt. And they're in negotiations now to remove some of the verbiage from Senate Bill 93 to protect the schools like Carter G. Woodson, W.B. Du Bois Academy, Newcomer Academy, Grace James, because the premise and the foundation of our institutions are all about giving this space of excellence to brown and black students or students who just got here from other countries. And so that would alleviate our schools, not just the programs that we offer within the district, but it could also eliminate our schools as well. And so they're already in negotiations with changing the verbiage because something will more than likely pass, but it's just what do we have the power over to make sure that we're protected as certain legislation passes. So I'm concerned. I've been with the district for many, many years, and the reason I'm in the position that I'm in now is because of the programs I started, like Girls on the Rise, which is an all-girls program that is geared towards literacy of black and brown girls and making sure that they have a level of excellence and high standards as far as academics are concerned, to prove that if we teach from a culturally responsive lens and if we challenge our students to either meet or exceed those grade level expectations and standards, then they will meet that benchmark, they'll meet that goal, as opposed to being in a mainstream school where they're not targeted as far as teaching from their lens, and then they fall through the cracks or they just become another number. They're actually named in our spaces. And so I'm concerned about the bill, and I've already we had a town hall meeting last week, and I was like, right now, email your legislators. If they don't change the verbiage, we're going to get our buses together and we're going to drive down to Frankfurt and we're going to cause some good trouble because the future of our boys at my school are at stake if this does pass away.
So are you at a public school or you're
Yes.
You're at a public school?
I'm at a public school.
And this is why House Bill 208,
Mm-hmm.
this is why it's important, because everything that you just said can be protected with the House Bill 208.
Okay.
Because then what happens next is you need to charter, you need to come out of the public school system and go private, and then those programs can't be taken away because they're now your own. So do we want to roll it into that?
I want
just go back.
I want to go back a little bit.
Just go back.
Speaking about House Bill, Senate Bill 93, excuse me. And because I'm not only the co-chair of the Kentucky Alliance, I'm also an educator with Jefferson County Public Schools. And taught special education. And I'm now the ECE, which is Special Education Implementation Coach, where I sit and I chair ARC meetings for our special education students. Special education is equity because it's providing students who have a disability with the same opportunities that students who don't have a disability are getting with education. Now, when you think about them being, you hear the divisive. That's their new buzzword now. With this bill, it is very divisive. It is dividing the history. It's teaching a history that is not true and what we've learned out of our lives in our history book. In elementary school, you learn about your community. In fourth grade, we learn about what we produce, what different areas in the United States, what we produce. And then in fifth grade, you learn about the history of America and slaves. If you look at a history book, you have those two columns. We don't have a full column when it talks about slavery. And in those books, all you see the white superior men. And the people of color are not so superior. They're looking for, it's like they have to go to them for help. It's like they're the white savior. Black people, Africans, my ancestors had a history before we came to America. Before we came here. That's the history we should be learning about. And we should be learning about the history after we got here because it shows the resiliency of our ancestors. Because look at where we were with nothing to what we have today. And if we all work together, we can have more than what we have right now. So this is very concerning to me because our black and brown students from all over do not have a sense of belonging when it comes to teaching history in the Jefferson County Public Schools if they remove and this bill passes. Let's just say that. If Senate Bill 93 passes, that our kids will not have a sense of belonging. And our kids are crying out now. Look at our streets, they're crying out now because they don't have a sense of belonging. If we had the sense of belonging and we taught it in our schools from pre-K on through 12th, our kids will have so much, they would be prospering. They would be doing other things in life other than doing the things they're doing today.
Okay.
And
this is great that we talked about those bills first, because I'm gonna say it from I'm speaking for myself as a mother, as an educator who's worked in independent black schools here locally. After a while, I'm gonna try to watch my words. Black people have to start doing for themselves, right? So we have these wonderful programs, as you mentioned, and then we have a rich history that's being denied. So you would think quite naturally, do I really want to argue with someone to teach my history to black and brown babies? Honestly, black history needs to be in schools, right? But I feel like it's something we should be teaching them that in our own institutions, right? So we can get it from the top and not the middle. You can't start history with slavery. It doesn't work that way. If our children do not know who Aset, Asor, and who Haru are, there's a problem, right? Our creation story. So what I'm saying is when we get into House Bill 208, it is proposing school choice. I 100% support it because working in independent schools, with, low-income black families, it was great. We came up with our own curriculum. We taught the way we know our children need to learn, and it's different. When you're in our environments, it doesn't look like the classroom. You may have a couple of desks, but you might be sitting on a chair, you might be lounging on the couch. It looks different, you know what I'm saying? So, and then of course the environment is different. They have red, black, and green hanging up. They have, things that represent them, right? So, with school choice and school vouchers, number one, the school vouchers are granted to low-income and middle-class families, which they're really not trying to focus on the middle-class families. They're looking at the low-income families so that they can have the school voucher to use as tuition to go to a school of their choice. Right now with JCPS, a lot of the complaints from the parents I know and the complaints from myself as well, the curriculum is kind of outdated. The space is not exactly okay, and parents should have a choice to what type of environment they want their child to learn in, period. It shouldn't just be public schools. My children are in public school right now because I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice right now. I don't have a choice. It's not on the table. And I'm actually in the midst of the space of creating the charter school where I work at. We're going to charter that and then bring in the elementary and the middle school component. We really want to get with those independent schools, because another thing that happens with independent schools in Louisville, black ones, they don't last as long is because the parents can't afford the tuition. They can't afford it. Excellent program, but the parents can't pay it. Even if it's $100 a week, that's $400 a month times 12. Not a lot of families don't have that, So with the voucher, it helps. You know what I'm saying? So honestly, you can start building your own economic base by building your own schools. I'm not trying to make it a race thing. We're not saying white people are not important or Asian children aren't important or anything like that. But it's kind of like black people have to look at their condition. Okay, Asians have a community where they have schools. The Muslim community has areas where they have schools. Asians, I think I said them already. Whoever, everybody has it but us. And it's okay that we are in public schools. We're not saying, because all parents are not going to choose to send their children to choice schools. They might want to stay in the system, and that's fine. But there should be other options because all children learn differently. And the time period is different. The language is different. A lot of things are different. And JCPS may not offer everything, right? And so, and even when we get into components about the programs, I'm afraid my program's going to be taken away. Well, if you come together as a community, those programs, and create a charter school, all those programs there exist. And now these children have a house to go to. And that's what we need to do. And that's progression for me inside of Louisville, Kentucky. That's what I want to see, not just for my community or whoever else wants to do it. I created a school. Layla Hampton L created a school. I used to work at KYLA. There's people that build schools, and they should be able, you know what I'm saying, to help get funded. Now here goes the funding thing. Well, let's go back to the private, because I remember at the board meeting, someone had suggested that, was saying that, well, people like St. X and Trinity, they're going to take all the funding and da-da-da-da. Well, no, they're exempt. No, that's not true. Trinities and all of those places, they don't get the voucher. It is for low-income families. Let's make that clear. It's for low-income families. And then what was the other part? Where's it coming from? Everybody thinks it's coming from JCPS. It does not come from common school funds. It does not. It does not come from JCP at all. It's individuals and corporations. As a matter of fact, I think an article was like that first year, if it gets passed, it'll be in 2025. So the first year might be starting off like at $25 million. So those individuals and corporations can get a kickback with taxes for like up to $1 million or something like that. But it does not affect JCPS at all. It doesn't affect the teachers' pay. It doesn't affect anything. You know what I'm saying? So when we're talking about these monies and all of that extra stuff, it's just, not that I am aware of. Like, I've read everything too, and it checks out. But I think it will help Black and brown and oppressed children, especially for parents that need a different situation, because now you can build that. If it's so much behavioral, we don't want to make a behavioral school, but there's a curriculum that helps a child with social and emotional level. We have to start creating at this point, because JCPS is not working by itself, and we can see it. You can see it. And if parents are so much complaining about teachers this or curriculum that, or they're not doing this, well, don't complain about it anymore. You can just do it yourself. Like all those programs you just said, we need to come together at a table and create a charter. And then you just make, and the school shouldn't be big like JCPS. They don't have to be huge. You know what I'm saying? You can be small, and they should be small. You know what I'm saying? They don't need 1,000 children in one space, 400 students in one space. You don't even need 100 students in a space. It could be 50 over here, 40 over there. Little tiny. It works. It works. I love it. I love it because for a person like me, again, who created a school, I could have benefited from that. I don't operate anymore because there's no funding, and my parents can't pay tuition. It's that simple. So if they're opening the space for school choice, why? As a parent, I want options. I want to be able to have options for my child to go somewhere else to learn. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to vote for that.
Okay. So I think, I'm sorry. I think what it is I'm opposed, and I believe is JCTA. Some people put that title out there either. But we're opposed a for-profit charter school. That's
the difference.
Yeah, that's the difference. And no, we don't want to take funding from Jefferson County Public Schools because we have over 100,000 students, and we need the funding so that we can have the resources for our students, so that they are successful. So that's the only thing. If it's not going to take away from public schools,
It does not.
Then, and
It does not.
if they can guarantee that, that would be great. That would be great. But I don't want to take away, because like I have children that study in public school. I have a grandchild. I have nieces and nephews that are still going to be going to public school that may not get that voucher to get to go to that charter school or that private school or whatever. Yeah.
And even homeschooling is considered, anything outside of public school is considered private. So even if you had a homeschooling co-op or something like that, those vouchers would be able to be accessed to as well.
Well, I would say one thing I think about some of these bills, like House Bill 5, Senate Bill 93, and some of the others that are out there is that I think it's important to understand is a lot of these ideas and these bills are not coming from our legislature. They're coming from national sources, and these bills are being introduced in lots and lots of states. So House Bill 5, which one of the things it does is, as you mentioned, is sort of criminalize homelessness. It also extends the penalties for all kinds of different crimes. It requires mandatory minimums. There's like 37 parts of that bill that will increase the number of people who are in jail and prison and how long they're in jail and prison. It's written by a think tank out of Texas, and it's being put in a bunch of different states. The DEI, the attack on DEI, that is a national strategy. Those bills are being introduced in legislatures all across the country. And I just mentioned that to say that, like, I feel like part of the conversation should be, understanding, kind of taking a step back even from the bills themselves and figure out, like, what is going on here? Like, why are they doing this? Why are these copycat bills being introduced? What is the goal here? And there is, on the one hand, the actual real impact on people that you all have done a great job talking about, and the real harms to people, and that's really, really important. But the reason they're doing it is to create fear and to divide people, to make people resentful and fearful about crime, about not feeling like their culture, or my culture in that case, is recognized or appreciated. It's to be divisive, right? So I just think it's important to think about that when we look at these and sort of recognize the game that's being played, and absolutely call and mobilize and get those bills stopped if we can, rolled back if we can, but also figure out recognize what they're doing. They are really trying to be divisive. Last year was about LGBTQ kids. There's sort of like a strategy of new boogeyman to introduce and to get people talking about and targeting, and it hurts real people, but it also kind of distracts from things that everybody needs, like housing, health care, all the things that we all need that really are not. Because the other big thing, it's on the agenda for us to talk about, the other big thing they're doing this session is passing a budget to fund stuff. And we're not talking about that as much because that affects everybody, and particularly low-income communities, because they have this other stuff out there to distract and divide us. So I just mentioned that, and I think it's important. And I will say, I don't even live in Jefferson County, so I can't speak to the local situations in your all's communities, and I want to be real humble about that. But I will say, when it comes to the private school thing, that the constitutional amendment just gives the legislature the authority to do whatever they want to do about funding private schools. Because right now they can't do it at all. It's the state Supreme Court ruled unanimously that because there was another bill that did what you described, it got thrown out unanimously. So they have to go to the ballot, and they have to change the Constitution to allow them to do. But it will allow them to do whatever they want. And unfortunately, what we're seeing in other states, is they do start with low-income kids, but they don't stop there. They really do tend to make it bigger and bigger. And you've seen in states like Florida and Arizona, where it's like universal vouchers, everybody gets a voucher. And part of the issue is, of course, that if you're wealthy, you can get subsidized for sending your kids to a school you're already sending them to, and it kind of breaks down support for the public schools where we all pitch in and support. So I think personally, just again, I don't know the specifics of this community, but I do know what I'm seeing in other states, and what I know about the budget. There's already money coming out of public education, and if we divert money to anything else, it will take money from public, because there's just not extra money.
But it's still going to education. It's just not public education, but it's going to education.
It would.
So you're saying my tax dollars, because you can speak for your tax dollars, you can't speak for mine.
Sure.
So I don't mind my tax dollars going outside of the public school system, and it's still funneling to education, because every child is a dollar sign. No matter where that child travels, a dollar should follow the child. I'm not saying children with dollar signs, but children are allocated a certain type of funding to go, you know what I'm saying, to where they go. So I don't mind my tax dollars doing that, because if I create a charter school that's Afrocentric, something designed that way, I would want those tax dollars to go there because it's still going towards education. I don't know why that's why I'm saying the city is not progressive. I don't know why we feel like public school is the only way. Like, I love public school. I'm a product of public schools, but we have to expand. There are dreamers. There's people that want to build schools. You know what I'm saying? That could be great competition with the public school system. Great competition. Great. There's great. Like, the achievement gaps would probably change tremendously. And that's why I said, look at Philadelphia with those freedom schools. They got a whole. Philadelphia has a whole bunch of charter schools, black charter schools, by the way, and it does not affect the public school system itself. It just doesn't. But it does, help those children go to be able to go to a school to learn in an environment in which the parent wants it, where they want their child to be. Period. Point blank. So, if anything, it complements the public school system. So, I don't understand why we're fighting that. But that's why other cities are more progressive than ours, because we don't want to take the leap of faith. We don't want to entertain the idea. I don't know what everyone is looking at. Like, I see something beautiful, and it's kind of like, well, what if the big, rich people or something take all the money? And it's just like, go look at where it's working and do that, because it works.
Well, there are situations where it's for profit, and the charter schools are built not with the students in mind, but with the dollar sign in mind. And that concerns me, because a lot of times they infiltrate inner cities, they infiltrate urban areas, and they're not really concerned about the education. I'm all for school choice. I really am. Even before this came about years and years ago, when I started the program I was talking about earlier, I said I would love for this to be my school. So I know I would do well, you would do well, but there are places and different companies that just want to see the dollar sign on the student. So I'm completely open to school choice. My concern is are the parameters around that to ensure that our babies are being educated properly, despite
I feel
their
like
circumstance.
the teachers should have credentials. The curriculum should be approved. Their policies and procedures, all of that. Of course, you gotta have that anyways. You can't just throw it up and then be like, give me a voucher. All of that has to be approved first and foremost. So yeah, and I think that's something beautiful that we can do collectively as a community, because we have some really excellent educators. And there's some that have left JCPS. They actually quit with a lot of things that are going on. I have a couple of friends who was like, I just can't do it anymore, but they love to teach.
I see some of the common thread of what we're talking about is the cost of these programs, whether we're talking about education or law enforcement, and then the impact of these programs, whether we're talking about education or law enforcement. So the question I think we're debating right now in Frankfort, and I appreciate the statement about, okay, there's a whole state budget, a biennial budget, 2-year budget being crafted. It's being crafted by people who are supposed to represent us. So our first challenge is, who are our representatives in the state house and Senate? And in my lifetime, there's been almost a complete turnover in the House rep representation. There are folks who are representing our communities whose names we don't know. In some cases, phenomenal talent who are fighting for just the issues we're talking about. In some cases, who the heck is this person? Where do they come from? Who do they represent? What are they saying behind closed doors? So our first challenge is to make sure that the people who are watching this video and the folks sitting at this table know who these folks are and can engage these folks. On the basis of education, I'd like to make a distinction between the private schools and the public chartered schools. So the dilemma is, if it's a public school, who can play in that water, right? So the state, the court decided that the state has the full and sole responsibility for public education. So this law is now trying to change that to say that others can participate in that. When we look at the Jefferson County Public Schools, we have got to look at it as is it performing for us or is it not? And because it is so massive, it's nearly impossible to hold the Jefferson County Public Schools accountable. It's one of the largest districts in the country. There's some efficiencies that come from that. It can do things that other school systems in Kentucky can't do. It's leading in a lot of ways. It has a lot of analysis in it. It has a lot of capacity for kind of debating policy. But when it comes down to the space between the student and the teacher, all of that size above that is crushing that relationship. All the size above that means that a single parent cannot likely have any impact on the administration of education in this county, and it cannot stay that way. Jefferson County Public Schools has failed us in a lot of ways. I had my children come up through it, I came up through it, and I ran for school board. And when you look at the numbers, there is pure failure for people of color occurring through this system. And we can put some spices on it and put some icing on it and say we're trying, and trying is a good thing. Well, what about outcomes? So then when I say that, I go back to DEI and I ask, how does that impact outcomes, not just effort? Are we making sure that we are truly educating people of color? On the basis, if we switch back over to law enforcement and homelessness, are we, okay, it's not a question of where people are camping. What apparatus have we put into place to serve the needs of those folks? Because each person in that camp has a problem, a fundamental problem in their life, and the problem is not who's going to donate for their next meal. The question is, what do we need to do to restore their life, their freedom? Very few of them, I imagine, want to be there. And so I'm afraid that some of this wants to sweep it under the rug. If we can't see them, it's fine. And that's disgusting. And I think we're better than that as Kentuckians. But it does broach the question, what are we doing to make sure these folks assemble back into an orderly and law-abiding existence? So I would love to see it paired up with a deep dive into healthcare questions. How do you offer healthcare to this population? How do you offer long-term care to this population in a way that can help to restore their lives? I am really concerned, just to kind of go back to the who is making these decisions, that fear thing is I'm going to say that it's not so much fear, but it is, they're playing games with the system. My mama used to, and you probably had a lot of people say, stop, don't play on my phone. Well, our government is our phone. It's our way of communicating our needs to people who can make a difference. And some of these bills are just playing on our phone. You know what I mean? They are trying to bring up debates for raising money to solidify their relationship with donors and these sorts of things. And that's not entertaining to me in a state where we have so many needs in healthcare, education, law enforcement, equity, inclusion. We need real leaders who are in there fighting to make things better. And the reason things are not getting better in West End of Louisville, some parts of Lexington, is because of these games. Because, you know, who here knows their state rep? You know? Can you call them? Will they take your call? Will they take your issue? And the people who are watching this video, do you know your state rep? Do you know what a state rep is? Do you know what a state senator is? If we can't answer those questions, that's a part of the problem.
So I want to go back to you talking about the houseless. What can we do to make their lives better? Well, first of all, we have to look at the situation. They're homeless, houseless, whatever they want to call them. That's what they are. But we have to rehabilitate them. Because I can go get a homeless person off the street, bring them in here and say, hey, we got a room, we have water, running water, electricity, refrigerator, we don't have a stove, we have a microwave. You can cook, do what you want to do. But if they're stuck in that mindset of being homeless, this is not going to make them happy. So we have to start by rehabilitating them. What do they, finding out what they need. Because some of them are on drugs, having mental illness. So we have to work, we have to fix that first. And then we're gonna start to progress and bring you in to where this is where you can stay. But you're not going to stay right now because we have to change the mindset before they can be happy with having a roof over their head, because they're used to having a tent or they're used to having a cardboard box or whatever they're sleeping in nowadays, and they're used to being on the street, and that's where they are. So that's what we need to be doing right now instead of criminalizing them.
I was just going to add that the Coalition for the Homeless, which is working this bill, said about 30% of the people who are homeless in Louisville at any one time are dealing with a drug addiction or mental illness. So those people are part of it, but a lot of it is people also who just they've been evicted. They can't afford a place to live. It's a housing issue. There are a lot of children that are homeless at any one time. There are, people who are, are housing insecure. So we tend to sort of, and what this bill does, I'm afraid, is kind of just further stigmatize people who are without a home, when in fact they're not that different from most people. They're just, a job loss and an eviction away from being in the same boat. Mm-hmm. So it's going to require certainly not jailing people, which is going to, if you do have an addiction problem, is going to increase the likelihood you have an overdose down the road. But looking at housing, looking at ongoing health care, looking at good jobs, and bring it back to the state budget. There's not $1 in the state budget for housing right now, not $1. And that is the real, I think, crisis. And I know where I live, a lot of the state, housing is unaffordable for people. It doesn't. It's rising. Prices are rising much higher than people's paychecks.
How does homelessness play on students?
How the homelessness play on students?
How is that intertwined?
We have students a lot. I don't know.
I heard that the number was something like 20% in Indiana town of students are homeless.
Yeah.
How are you going to learn when you don't know where your head laid last night?
Where are you going to sleep?
And where the food's coming
Am I
from?
going to sleep in my car? Is it going to be warm in the car? We have to, turn it off to save the gas. What am I going to eat?
And remarkably, it seems like a lot of teachers and instructors take that burden on in addition to their instructional responsibility, which makes their instructional responsibility a little bit stressed. Mm-hmm. And that's happening, and people are turning the other, the teachers got it, so the parents do it, the administrators do it, the government leaders do it. And that's disgusting if you think about it. We know this is happening. Mm-hmm. And so then the challenge for us is, what solutions do we have? Because clearly what's going on in Frankfurt isn't generating solutions for us. The people we're electing apparently aren't generating solutions for us. And I think it starts there.
And it does. Because, first of all, you need to tell our legislators, we are your constituents. We pay you. You should be working for us in trying to find out what we need. And they're not, because other people are in their pockets and they're working for them. It's just like several years ago, or 4 years ago, I went to DC with JCTA to speak to them about, I'm going to forget because I'm having a brain fart, excuse me, you all. But it was dealing with, I can't remember the name of it, but Social Security. So if this is my second career, I'm not going to get all the Social Security that I paid into. So say if I'm a teacher, my husband is, he has Social Security, he passes away. When I retire, I don't get his Social Security. So we went down there to talk to our legislators. And Mitch McConnell did not take our call. He didn't meet with us. So it's like, what are you doing? And then when you hear that he has this stack of work on his desk that he's not touching, for Kentucky is a problem for me. So that's one thing. We need to make sure that our legislators are working for us. I am begging people, whoever is looking at this, know who your legislators are. Call them, email. You call them every day. They work for you. They're working in our house. That Capitol up there in Frankfurt, our tax-paying dollars pays for that. You need to call them, email them, write them. Do it every day. Do it every day, because they work for us, and they need to be reminded that we pay you and you work for us, and this is what we want.
I was wondering if we'll talk a little bit about the charter school issue a little bit more, because I think it's important. It seems to me that it was with the introduction of the charter school policies is when Jefferson County Public Schools started to innovate in the area of creating these specialized schools. And I think it was good. I mean, you've got some phenomenal talent leading those organizations, and I thank you for your service to the kids in the community. My challenge becomes, as I've already kind of declared, I think that the bureaucracy of JCPS is too large. The challenge becomes, Did you create it because it was a good idea, or did you try to fend off anybody getting into your space? And that's a tough question we have to ask our school board leaders and our state legislators. Fundamentally, I don't believe that the government, personally, should have the exclusive power to offer free public education. Because obviously, for one thing, public education is free to the user, but it does cost. It costs tax dollars, right? I believe that there are solutions that can be put into place that can cost. I just looked, one of the stats I looked up before we went on the conference here. We spend $11,300 per student in Kentucky, and that's $2,000 less than the national average. So we're not overspending on education. We're not. We're underspending on education. That's what the numbers show. We need to spend more on education. But besides the cost, what about the impact? If you have no competition, you don't know what that baseline is. Can we do better per $11,300? What was your tuition? Was your tuition in your program $11,000? Was it $800 a month? So imagine if you were offered, let's say, $750 a month per student, and had some of the other privileges and funding sources for food and transportation that the public system has. Could you generate results that would make the community proud?
Heck yeah.
So without competition, there's no way to know. And then the thing that I would also encourage people to do, Jefferson County Public Schools, if it's nothing, it's transparent. The data on the website tells the dark story. That, for example, 4 years ago, one of the leading indicators, or one of the primary indicators I saw, was how many students after they graduate high school are pursuing their post-secondary education. At Manual High School, the student body was 1,200 students. 99% of them would graduate, and 90% of them were still pursuing post-secondary education 4 years after graduating Manual. At Shawnee High School, the class was 400 students. And 4 years after graduating, 10% of those students were still pursuing post-secondary education. I don't believe that we spend 8 times more money at Manual High School than we spend at Shawnee, yet the outcomes are drastically different. Now, a lot of y'all know why, right? Because from the beginning, Manual cherry picks its student body from the best in the county. But we also know that Shawnee and other majority minority schools don't get the best resources, in my humble opinion. Maybe you agree with me. Why can't we fix these issues? So it's not just a matter of continuing to tinker around the edges at the core. Outcome is poor for people of color. After this experiment with busing, set 40 years later, I'm going to say it's failed. Busing has failed. It made us feel better, but our neighborhoods are just as segregated, and our education system, in an overall scope, is only serving about 60% of our students and not serving 40% of our students, and far too many of those 40% are people of color. And so are there other people who can come into this mix and provide better outcomes? That's just an open question that we can debate at the Board of Education. We can debate it in Frankfurt. We can debate it in City Hall, because now with the law, it's my understanding the mayor can designate charter schools. Let's have that debate, and let's not let these foolish Democrat Republican side. Let's figure this out.
And you know what? So when you take, where are you at again?
Du Bois.
So when you take the Du Bois Academy, let's say the Decode Project, Men of Color, there's a whole bunch of them, right? Take those programs and compare to. Trying to figure out where you could compare them from, because you could use that to start.
Kind of like a no middle school or something, some sort of.
Yeah, take those programs and start doing some comparison. I don't know how I really want to say it, but that's a good start, because if there's outcomes, then you can now you know what I'm saying. Now we can validate for ourselves why we can become a charter to compete with JCPS.
And I think what you said, Doctor,
I need to sit down some
was
more.
that you were a part of that, right? You were at the program level, providing outcomes that inspired the creation of some of these institutions.
Absolutely.
That's absolute leadership.
And our boys are actually outperforming black and brown boys in the district and some mainstream students across the state.
That's remarkable.
And we just got that data a few weeks ago. So our framework does work. I mean, we're targeting high level instruction, high level rigor, streamlined to our students, and they don't see that at other places. And the outcomes do show that they are soaring.
I'd love to see some of these state
Insurmountable.
legislators walk through your program. Now, there's some contention there that happens, right? There's some risk, there's some stepping on toes. But some of these people who are separated from the desk, that desk I'm talking about, it has all of this debate above it, but nobody's actually seen the desk. I think we should have state legislators walk through and see, because the first thing, my impression is those students look fantastic, right?
They do.
They walk with a certain pride and that sort of thing, and you guys present them very well. One of the exciting things is the cultural space is full of images of leaders of color in history. Shout out to the African American Center. That building is now it's becoming what it was ever supposed to be, which is an allusion to our history. You know, if we can learn about Isaac Shelby and all of the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, what about some of the people of color? We need to meet each other. We're both saying we need to reach out and talk to legislators. They need to reach out and come and visit us and see us and walk through our spaces and walk down my block at midnight. I know that sounds ridiculous. I asked one of my friends, I won't say which friend, I said, walk through the house. You just said something. I'm challenging you to walk through the Hall of Justice one time and just watch. Tell me what you see if at noon you walk through the Hall of Justice. I'm not putting any qualifiers on, but we've been in the Hall of Justice, so you know what you're going to see. But I don't think this person knows. Because if they have a challenge, they send their lawyer. They don't have to go there. But if you go there, there's something you see, there's a lot of it, and it is everything you need to know
Everything you need to know.
about what's going on in our state, in our city.
Nationally,
I
can I ask Jason a question? Nationally, would you say, in your opinion, charter schooling works or no?
Well, it's
It's probably not black and white, but
I think it's complicated. I think that there will be people providing evidence of successful charter schools or successful subsidized private schools and unsuccessful ones. But I think I think it is important to realize, or not to realize, but to look at what's happening nationally. This is changing very, very rapidly. Not in Kentucky yet because of the Constitution, but in other states it's changing very, very rapidly. And there is a very aggressive effort to create. I mean, the whole idea is less accountability to the public, to the voters, to who we elect. That's the whole idea. That's the whole purpose of it, right? Is to take the regulations off. So you will subsidize schools that discriminate. They will accept some kids and not others. They will choose their kids. There's no requirement that all kids get accepted in subsidized schools under those scenarios. Public schools do require that you take everybody. There are companies that are very interested in making money off setting up schools with, that are storefront schools with computer monitors provided by big tech corporations that provide very little in the way of quality instruction and take that voucher and run. There are all kinds of things like that actually happening. Because the whole thing is about loosening the rules. You'll have schools with, very extreme ideologies of certain types subsidized through this. And there's no question that part of the challenge and part of the risk is that everybody that takes advantage of that will have less interest in putting their tax dollars into the shared pot for the public schools that accept everybody.
Can I ask a question?
That's just going to happen. And so I just think that's the downside, that you can't assume that they're going to continue to do that. You can't assume they're going to continue to provide the voucher either. That they're right. They provide the voucher. There's no guarantee they'll keep providing that voucher because decided by those same folks.
Real
there's
quick.
just a lot of, I think there's a lot of risk there.
Historically, I know some of y'all know this probably, but historically, our education system in this country wasn't to educate the student. It was to make a worker, right? That's why I started with agriculture, and then once you got, if you were from an affluent family, then you could apprentice in a doctorship or attorney or, you know, in the higher profile professions. So, and there wasn't school for you to go to. You just apprenticed, earned your experience, and you got it. So, two questions in there. When did we start making it so that education has to be about what we think it is today? Right? It has to be a professional. It has to come from everybody. Everybody has to be included into it in a certain kind of way. And then two, doesn't it seem like big money funding education has been the historical motion of this country?
What do you mean big money?
I mean, who funded the first universities here? It wasn't the United States government. It was the Carnegies. It was the Rockefellers. And if you look at who started the 5 most prominent HBCUs, it was not black people. And Howard wasn't started to make professionals. It was started to make smart butlers, to make you more intelligent when you walking around my house.
Can that be cynical a little bit? Is that a little cynical? A little bit?
No, I mean, that's true. You can look that up, yeah.
Okay, but here's my perspective on it. I believe it started with the Industrial Revolution, where operators like Ford needed people to have certain skills that were above agricultural skills. They needed them to be able to count, to do some routine things, right? So they needed some broader set of talents in the workforce, but it's still workforce oriented. And shouldn't it be workforce oriented? Now we've evolved and tried to add liberal skill sets so that people can think and feel. But our challenge here is that we are not in a vacuum. Our students now, let me this aside. I heard that in Michigan, I believe, for the first time, more Chinese students were admitted than American students. We're dealing with a global system of things now, so that it might very well be that our state universities are more interested in international students because education is so valuable. So we're debating some DEI issues here. We're debating some Republican Democrat stuff. If we take the veil off of it, we're talking black people versus white people. But the world is not black people versus white people. We need our kids to be able to intellectually compete against talent coming out of China and Iran and all these other places to keep the jobs here.
I think that's a misnomer because we always assume that the Indian kids, the Arab kids, and the Chinese kids are smarter than our American, get a better education than American education because they can put 1, 2, 3s, and 4s together faster than our kids here. But when you look at the creative processing, those kids don't have any creative flow in their processing. So I think it's more of a different type of education. I don't think we should put a value on that theirs is better or ours is worse. Now, when you get into who can recite this multiplication table fast enough, you know what I mean? They might have that, right? And we know how that translates into the future, but we also know how creative freedom and creative expression translates into the future as well. So I think there's a balance of it.
Balance, but unfortunately, I don't know if the reading, writing, arithmetic aspect of it is being honored the way that it had been historically because we have other priorities we're trying to shove into the classroom. And so for black people...
And that's what I'm saying. Reading, writing, arithmetic has never been a priority of education.
I'm going to say... I came along in 1983 and went into the public system. Came out in 97. Whole lot of reading, writing, and arithmetic that I went through. I wanted to double back real quick and talk about admitting anybody public schools. Can we admit that there are basically private schools inside the public school system?
Absolutely.
Because Manual doesn't have to admit anybody who applies. Male doesn't. Ballard doesn't. And then there's some feeder schools that are prepping kids for that. And I went to high school with the person who lived in Jeffersonville but went to Manual High School. So these schools are set up for a class of folks, kids, who probably don't want to invest in private education. Also, if you look at a map I tried to Google it on Google Map, and I was looking for private schools. Even the Christian ones, there are none west of I-65. Nearly none, I should say. There are a few. There's some great small schools that are dotted here and there. But most, as much as we cry for offering solutions to people, alternatives to people, there are none west of I-65. So that's a concern. Do we really care about education, or is there something else we're really debating?
Well, with two educators sitting here, I'm going to say that we really care about education.
Absolutely.
That's the reason we're here.
Yes,
Yeah.
I really do. And I am going to, I do want to say this is something that you said. When you walk into a school building, and I am going to wrap us up here. And my school, we might have close to 1,200, if we don't have 1,200 already. We have teachers that are sitting in classrooms with 27 plus students in them. So if we can put more money into public, and I'm not saying, let me say, put more money into education, we need smaller classrooms, so that we can have more one-on-one with our students. And then we probably will see our students progress and see that gap close.
What's the ideal level? Have you thought about that? Is there something people talk about? What's the right size? Is that impossible to know?
I
I think we talked
Depends.
about it.
11.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on trauma. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
What the students are bringing into the classroom. So you can have a class of, when you look at the special ed classes, you can have a class of 6 emotionally disturbed students that may feel like it's 50, but then you can have a class of 15 that are on, below, maybe above grade level, that's more manageable still than 27. So I think it really depends on the trauma and the backpacks, the invisible backpacks that students bring to school with them before we can actually put a number on it. Right now at our school we have small class sizes, but we're about at 20. We have 20 black males, just about, we have other demographics as well, but it could be 20 or more. Our high school has about 20 students, but we come from all over the district. And I will say this, within 1 week, we had a student whose father OD'd and was found in an alley, a student whose mother was stabbed 15 times. She lived, and then he committed suicide the next week. We have students who experience all types of stuff. That's just within a week, you know what I mean? And so we're talking about funding, and a part of Senate Bill 93 is to remove some of the funding from mental health support. So we can have smaller class sizes, but if they remove funding for mental health support, then teachers aren't equipped to deal with those things. And we have to have social workers, we have to have mental health practitioners, we have to have student and community liaisons, we have to have youth service center coordinators, because those non-academic barriers sometimes prevent our students from being their best selves. Because I don't remember who said this earlier, but the homeless students that we are charged with servicing every day, they come with those traumas as well. And so how can we teach them if they're hungry? How can we teach them if their father was just killed? How can we teach them if their brother was just killed? That just happened last week as well. So although our school is soaring academically, we make sure that we know every student's name, They have a relationship with at least one adult in the building that they trust. And we're constantly assessing their needs, constantly reaching out to parents. We just started a grief group at the high school. We're working on a grief group at the middle school because we've lost so many family members, friends to gun violence, to natural losses, to all those things. And so I don't think it's a matter of what is the class size that's perfect, it's what's the class size that's perfect for my classroom right now. Because that's the only thing that I have control or charge of right now.
And also, I'm also advisory council for the racial equity policy with Jefferson County, and we do make recommendations to the chiefs. And with that in place, I do believe that JCPS is going and have been going in that right direction for the last 4 years or 5 or 6 years, I'm going to say, because the other
You're talking about the racial equity policy.
Yes, so I think we are, but we have to put more money into public education. I have to look more into that.
Let's keep
Yeah, we keep going. Have that conversation.
Iron sharpens iron.
Honestly, I think we should just go to somebody where it works. Like Philadelphia, they're open to even training, people who, especially independent black schools, they want to start charter schools, stuff like that. They even offer training. So it's kind of like, let's take a field trip together. Let's talk to them, see how it works. Like, go to where it works, and let's kind of like learn from them, and then come back to the drawing board and see if this is something that we can do collectively together as a community.
Thanks. So, anyway, thank you all for joining in and listening to this panel. Again, get to know who your legislators are, contact them, email them. If you have any questions, we're definitely at the bottom of the video. We will have the website where you can go find out who your legislators are and have their contact number as well as email. Thank you.